record this. And we are good to go for Ben Cherington. Any questions for Ben?
And what made now the right time to trade Jacob Stallings? And just what do you think about, the return you got there?
Sure. Well, first of all, just, want to say, probably echo some of what many of you have written the last day or so, and probably repeat what I've said before. Really appreciate Jake and really enjoy getting to know him the last couple of years and everything he did for the Pirates. He's a good player, good person, certainly respect him, and really wish him well and root for him. So, I think when we got approached at the deadline about Stallings, and then more after the season, and we were approached to the point where we started to look at, could we both maintain strength at the position, with the attributes that, we care about at the position, and gain young talent at the same time. And so we worked through that sort of on parallel fronts, and ultimately felt like if we could do both, then it fit with what we're trying to do as an organization. And so that pushed us on both. Not that the trade and the free agent signing were, had to be linked together, but we certainly considered the trade and then waiting on catcher. But I think, again, if we felt like if we could do both, maintain strength of the position and add young talent, that just made sense for us, even if it was hard. In this case, it was hard because we respect Stalls, but as we've talked about before, we've got to be disciplined about adding young players, adding young talent, however we can, as much as we can. And of course, we care about having strength behind the plate as we grow this team and help our young pitchers grow. So feel like we're able to accomplish both with this trade, even if it was hard to do, but not supposed to be easy. So that's how we were thinking about it, Jason.
Ben, how you mentioned that some of these discussions happened during the trade deadline. How long did this trade in particular take to materialize? Because Jake said that, he didn't hear anything until like pretty much the day of that there was even a rumor.
Yeah, so Miami was one of the teams that approached us at the deadline, and then picked that conversation up after the season, and were persistent. There were a handful of teams involved. Miami was, I would say, the most continuously persistent. And there certainly was never a timeline, up until probably 24 hours before it happened. I think our full expectation was that Stalls would be a Pirate going forward, but ultimately sometimes these things just come together quickly at the end. In this case, it did. And then of course, you want to be in communication with the players, and it did happen quickly. And we did the best we could to communicate as well as we could right there at the end.
With that being said, Ben, are you happy with your depth at catcher with Perez, and I assume maybe Perez if you eventually put him back on the 40-man, or are you still searching for catching depth?
Well, I'm certainly excited about Roberto Perez joining the Pirates, and we can make that official. He's an excellent defender, as you all know. He's coming from an organization that has done a great job, and one that we admire in terms of their pitching development and pitching infrastructure. He's been a part of that for a long time, certainly caught himself some great pitchers there. So we like a lot about that part of his game. He's known as a fierce competitor, teammate, passionate, obviously coming from a long line of great Puerto Rican catchers. So continue that tradition. And there's pop in the bat, obviously a good offensive year in 2019. 2020 was down and then was banged up this year. So, we're excited about getting him healthy and, seeing what he can do offensively too, but really excited to add Roberto. We feel good about him, coming in and helping us behind the dish. He's his own player. He's a unique personality, his own personality. But certainly some of the things he does well are similar to what Stalls did well. And then we'll keep, and as you said, Michael Perez is here. We fully expect that Michael would, be in spring training competing for that second job. We signed Jamie Ritchie to a non-roster deal. Expect he would be part of that competition. And we'll keep looking. It's December 1st, and obviously, we'll see what transpires tomorrow. But typically, December 1st is still pretty early in the off season. So we'll keep looking at that position and see if we can strengthen it before spring training.
Ben, building off that, did you sense because the uncertainty after tomorrow led guys to be free agents to be more amenable to be approached and signed, in November as opposed to January, February?
It did feel like at least certain groups of free agents were moving quickly or more quickly the last few days and up until today. Hard to say, certainly seems like tomorrow probably has something to do with that. I'm speculating, but there were a bunch of deals that happened recently, and but there's still a lot of free agents left, and certainly a lot of conversation with teams left this offseason too.
And one of the guys you decided to bring back was Kevin Newman, who kind of struggled offensively the last 2 years, but his defense has been good. What led to the decision, especially given the crowded middle infield position on the 40-man roster right now?
Yeah, there's several things. I think, you mentioned the defense, and, sometimes with players, when players can do certain things really well, then sometimes all it takes is just a little improvement in a couple other things to make them a much more complete player. So he does some things already really well that give him a pretty solid floor as a player. And one of the things we admire about Kevin is when he's, when there's a challenge in front of him and he's given a challenge, he works his tail off and gets after it. And he's pretty sort of almost narrowly focused on accomplishing tasks. And he was challenged last winter on his defense, and sure enough, he improved it. I know from talking to him a lot during the season and after the season, he feels challenged about his offense, and he's committed to finding a way to improve. So we trust him to do that work. We'll see how that plays out, but we look forward to seeing him what he does with that challenge. And again, already does a lot of things well on the baseball field.
And whenever you make a move like this, there can be an unsettling impact, obviously, on the fan base. Not just because he was popular, but obviously, like you said, this is a very good player. And it can feel like every time somebody gets good, they're going to get traded out of Pittsburgh. What can you tell people about the status of Bryan Reynolds in your organization and whether or not he's going to stay a Pirate?
Well, we're really lucky to have Bryan Reynolds. What we first and foremost, what we're working towards every day, and all of our energy is going towards, is to try to win as quickly as possible. Obviously, we need good players to win. We need lots of good players. So we make trades. It's simply because we see an opportunity to get more players, get potentially more good players. But if we already have players who are performing at that level and have a chance to be here, when we believe we can win, then we're going to be pretty motivated to hold on to those guys. So trades will happen. The sort of calculation on the trade sometimes changes over time as your team builds, and doesn't mean they stop, because if you look at teams around the league that might be in similar markets who are succeeding right now, who are winning at a strong level at the major league level, they're still making trades. But the calculus behind those trades might change a little bit over time. I would expect that would happen with us too. So I think what I would tell our fans first and foremost is we're just spending every ounce of energy we can to get to winning as fast as we possibly can. And it's certainly going to be a lot easier to do that with Bryan Reynolds on the team.
And it might not be this simple or binary or whatever the word is, but like, does winning have to come first? Or do you feel like it's important to send a message to fans that these guys aren't going to go anywhere? Or do you need to see that winning before you guys do, sort of make a statement? Because I mean, you could have held on to Stallings and you could have, made a decision that I think emotionally people were sort of invested in, but like, does winning have to come first before you change your stance on that?
No is a simple answer, but the longer answer is that we're always looking at the total players that we have on the roster, in the system, how they're projecting, and so we have some idea of what the trend is and what it might look like if players progress at a reasonable rate over the next 6 months, 10 months, a year, 2 years, whatever the timeline is. And, as we see that starting to come together and, giving us a better chance to win more games at the major league level, then absolutely it'll make sense to think about, managing our roster or player acquisition differently if we see that, when we see that coming. And I think we're getting closer to that. And we're getting closer to that partly because we just have more players in the system than we did 2 years ago. So no, I don't think you wait for winning. I think you also need to make decisions based on, an informed estimate on, when that talent's going to come together and gel together and develop together to get us closer to it, and then complement and then be very clear on how we need to complement that group.
And one of the trends over the past decade in the baseball has been that you have to lose to win for the small market clubs. You see a lot of teams go through a period where they're losing a lot of games, get high draft picks, and then invest in the club. How much with what comes out of this, the next CBA or whatever, how much does that, in your estimation, have to change about small market baseball?
Well, the teams that we admire really a lot, I admire personally a lot, in terms of how they run their baseball operation, how they build their team, that are in somewhat similar markets, and I've mentioned some before: Tampa, Cleveland, Oakland, teams like that. They have what I think stands out about those teams is they likely at one point did go through maybe a longer period of struggles, but totally focused on getting to more winning. And then once they did, those teams have found a way to sustain that fairly consistently. They might have, smaller, dips or downturns, but they are, once they've sort of established that base, they've been able to make decisions. They give them a chance to sustain that over time. And, that's what we want to do, period. We want to get to winning, and then we want to figure out a way to sustain that. Doesn't mean it's going to be at the same level every single year, even after you get to winning. But if we do our jobs really well, that's what I believe we can do. So right now, it's about talent accumulation and doing all the little things better that we need to do to get to that as soon as we possibly can, and then find a way to sustain that.
How much of that is, Ben, how much of that is a follow-up? Is that about roster turnover, that this is just the reality of the game, is that you have to trade veterans for prospects and continually develop prospects, and that you're not going to be attached, fans can't be attached to a player being there long-term?
Maybe it's just the definition of long-term that changes over time. I know I've said this before, but I was a fan way before I did this job. And I remember, following teams in the 80s, and rosters were managed differently. And it was more common that you could attach to a single player for a longer period of time. It still happens. It still can happen in Pittsburgh too. And I hope it does personally with some players. But yeah, over time, there's going to be changes. And again, look at teams that are successful in situations like ours, and there's quite a bit of change on those rosters pretty regularly. But you can pick your spots, and sometimes there can be a player that can be there for a long time, and we certainly hope that's the case here.
Ben, in regards to the rosters, we saw a lot of different players play for the Pirates last year. Do you anticipate that there are going to be a lot of younger players getting an opportunity, and we'll see a lot of different players on the Major League roster this year?
Well, we've got a lot of young players who we believe are getting closer to earning that opportunity. We, started to see a handful of them last year come up and get a little bit of experience as we look towards spring training and imagine what our spring training roster will look like. That's exciting to me because there's going to be a lot of players in spring training who, whether they are in the big leagues in 2022 or not, are getting closer and have a chance to be part of what we're building. And so, yeah, I think you just see more and more of that over time. Again, it's balanced because there's still something to earning it. And, you got to perform in AAA first before you, get the opportunity to perform in the big league. So there's a balance there, but we hope we see more and more young players earn that opportunity.
And I know
Go ahead, Jason.
Ben, about Yoshi and the Moran move. And I know we asked you a lot about Yoshi, just, what's sort of your reaction, or why was it important to get him back? But also, why did you feel like you couldn't have Colin and Yoshi on the roster, or why was it the best move to non-tender Colin?
Yeah, as far as Yoshi specifically, excited to re-sign him. I think we all saw, once he got to Pittsburgh, that some of the things he's always done as a hitter were there. The ability to make good decisions, good swing decisions, get the ball in the air, hit with some impact. Managing that bat against lefties and righties. That's what he's done his whole life. And for whatever reason, there was a transition for him coming to the big leagues. We're excited just to have him, with the Pirates. Aside from that, we just really enjoyed getting to know him as a guy and being the teammate he is. He's a smart guy. He's obviously played and seen a ton of baseball. He's really insightful. So we just thought it was, a good fit, and excited to bring him back. The decision about Moran, it's not specifically about Yoshi, but at a moment in time this week, we just didn't feel like we could commit to going through the R process and committing to the roster right now with Colin. I told him on the phone that believe that he's a good Major League Baseball player and better than he showed last year, and would want to keep the door cracked and see what happens later in the offseason. I'm sure he'll have other opportunities too.
Ben, you mentioned the Miami approach. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Ben, with Chad Kuhl and Stephen Brault, the decision to let them go, is that just a matter of opening up opportunities for some of the younger pitchers that are kind of on the precipice of the majors right now?
There's always more than one factor. Obviously we're always trying to manage our 40 man and use the spots in the best way we can. But in those two cases, just different factors with each guy. In Chad's case, we just felt like, he's been honest, and we've had really good conversation with him about his desire to start. And, we just felt like at this particular time, it was best for him and all of us to give him a chance to get into free agency and see what happens for him there. And in Steven's case, obviously the health has gotten in the way the last couple of years, and that's frustrating because he's worked really hard. And when he's feeling good physically, he's shown that he can be an effective Major League pitcher, and we've liked having Steven. And again, we'll keep the door open for and see what happens here the rest of the offseason.
And what about the return from Miami? came into being that pushed you over to say, hey, this is it. This is a move we have to make. This is a move that makes the Pittsburgh Pirates better.
Yeah. So Thompson, Thompson's an interesting case. Obviously, a little bit of a late bloomer, I suppose. Still really early in his major league career. And what we saw last year, and we've spent a lot of time on him, was a guy who, number one, the pitches themselves have ticked forward, the quality of the pitches, and then he's also really starting to figure out how to use them. He generates a ton of weak contact, strike thrower. He's got a really good cutter, multiple good secondary pitches, and by all accounts, superb person, teammate, work ethic, all that stuff. So our group was high on him, and there's an opportunity to add someone who we think can be part of our rotation mix in 2022. And obviously, given where he is in his career, has a chance to be here for a while. The other two guys, obviously in the minor leagues, and would expect that they would, would have more time in the minor leagues going forward. Kyle Nicholas is a big physical right-hand pitcher with really good fastball slider. Still working on command and a third pitch. We believe, based on our assessment, that he has a chance to start. There's some things that he needs to develop in order to be a starter in the major leagues, but we're going to keep him in that role. Excited to work with him again. Really good reputation as a worker and a teammate. And the Pirates had spent a lot of time on him in the draft, coming out of Ball State. So there's a good history there. And Connor Scott's a really interesting athletic outfielder who, kind of adds to our mix of upper level outfielders, capable of playing center field. He can run, he's athletic, he can really throw. He's got some pop and starting to figure some things out this year offensively. We're excited about getting to work with him, frankly, and getting him in our hitting program. And, we hope there's some untapped potential there.
Hey, Ben, when I look at the starting rotation mix right now, I guess with the exception of Quintana, there's not a lot of track record and not a lot of experience there with some of the guys you have. Do you feel it's important this year to go out and get, whenever we pick back up, another starter, or perhaps even two for that rotation? Or do you think Quintana would be enough, or just kind of how do you see here, however many months from the season, how do you see that shaking out?
Yeah. We would like to still add to the rotation before spring training, before the season. We've been working on that front, aside from Quintana, both in free agency and trade. And again, Thompson, we feel like can factor into that. So yes, is the simple answer. We also feel like while you're right, we don't have guys with a lot of proven track record. Certainly most of the guys we have are still figuring themselves out as starters at the major league level. What we do have we think, is a lot of them, a lot of guys who are capable of doing that and have started to get a taste of the big leagues, or have had, parts of a year or most of a year now, and have a chance to be kind of through their transition period as we go into 2022. When Shelty and I did our exit meetings, we pretty intentionally told every pitcher who was in a starting role for the Pirates, who we knew was coming back, to prepare to come into spring training to fight and win a job. There's nobody that we assume is in a rotation, but there's a lot of guys who have a chance to be. And so there'll be a good competition in spring training. But yeah, if we can, we'd like to add more.
And I'm not asking you to give hot takes on the negotiations or something like that, but the fact that there could be a lockout here, I'm sure you guys have discussed it. How are you approaching it? How are you looking to use that time for benefit? Just what are those discussions, as much as you can maybe share, to try to navigate this period as a baseball ops group?
Yeah. So, well, first, continue to have a lot of confidence and faith in the folks at the league office who are working on this, the union, the players. Everybody wants baseball to happen, and confident that at the right time, there will be solutions, and we'll get baseball. We'll get baseball happening. We'll resolve CBA. I'm not going to guess when that's going to happen, and trust the folks in the room to figure that out for us. I know there's a lot of smart folks in that room on both the league and the player side. So if we are in a position where, we can't talk directly to players, let's say, there's a ton of work that we can do. First of all, minor league player activity continues. We have a camp. Shelton and I are on our way to the DR right now. That's why I've got a mask on. We've got a camp going on in the DR. Chance to get down there for me for the first time since being a Pirate. So that's exciting. And looking forward to seeing those kids. We've got a pitching camp going on right now in Bradenton with about 35 or 40 pitchers in Bradenton. That's kind of follows up on the Get Better at Baseball camp, Get Better at Pitching camp. Now it's this really, really creative name. So we'll have another development camp in January that maybe we'll let you guys decide what the name of that one is. But we'll have that. And then, so the minor league player development continues and is obviously really critical for us. And then there's no shortage of things that we need to keep getting better at in baseball operations. And there's always opportunity to do that. And if there is some period of time when we can't talk to players or agents, then we'll pour energy into that and find a way to keep getting better in our decision making and our process. Anything that helps us get better when players are back on the field, we'll put our energy into that.
And you mentioned the challenges with Kevin Newman. Curious whether one of them is to retain his starting job at shortstop, or if he's going to be a candidate second base. I see you have a lot of guys on the 40-man that can play second base. If you can talk about the competition there.
Yeah, again, I think competition is probably the right word. I mean, he moved around a little bit late in the season, and frankly, partly that was that we were just trying to get different guys opportunities in the infield and give guys a chance to play and take a look at guys at different spots. And so Kevin moved around to allow us to do that. His clearly, pretty clearly this year, what he brought to the field and his primary strength was his ability to play shortstop, defense at shortstop. And so we want to give him every chance to do that. And so would expect that going into spring training, that's the primary spot. But sure, there'll be competition and he knows that, and he has every opportunity to keep earning the playing time that he got this year.
How about at second base? I mean, you have a lot of candidates there.
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of candidates, and I think there's time to figure that out. It's probably an area in the infield where we're less likely to add externally, at least in terms of roster players. We think we got a number of guys that all have the potential to be good major league players and help us. And but similar to the pitching, a lot of them have not proven themselves fully at the major league level, and we want to give guys an opportunity to do that. And so that'll be fun, I think, to watch that play out in spring training and during the season.
In terms of infielder, I'd like to ask about Hoy. You've seen Hoy play like more than a month now.
Yep.
I assume that Pirates has like pretty much good idea what Hoy is, what type of player he is. So next year, is there specific like expectation, or did you give him any assignment, or there's ceiling for him?
In our exit meeting, we knowing he was going to be in Korea the off season and does his training in Seoul. We just really encouraged him to continue to work on his defense at all three of the infield spots: shortstop, second base, third. We know he can go to the outfield. That's probably something we can take care of in spring training if we have to, but really focusing on infield defense at all the spots. And as an offensive player, there's really a lot to like there. He's usually making pretty good decisions. He's started to hit the ball harder over the last year and a half. We thought his at-bats were really good, mostly really good while he was in the big leagues with us. Got into some balls and hit some home runs, and we think there's a good hitter in there. So we're looking forward to seeing more of them.
Ben, you said earlier that some of these offseason moves have to do with making a good estimate at when all the talent will come together. Some of the guys in the minor leagues. Do you have a better idea or a decent estimate of when you guys expect that will be? And is part of this just kind of planning for that?
Yeah, the estimate gets better every day. You know, it's like every day you get closer to it, it gets a little more clear. And you know, games do mean a lot because that's when we learn the most about how ready players are. So, you know, however we felt at the end of the season probably hasn't changed much to now, but we'll get back into games and learn more as we get into spring and next year. So it's not, I don't want to make it about, it's not a linear thing, right? It's not like this, it's not how baseball works. It's not like a straight line and you know, okay, on this date, these players are going to be here. That's when we're going to be ready. We both want to pursue it as fast as we possibly can. And that's through hard work and just finding ways to get better more quickly maybe than people think we can. But we understand also that players are human beings and they develop at different rates. Sometimes there's detours, sometimes there's side doors you got to go through first and get back on track. So, you know, nothing ever actually is a straight line as much as we want it to be. But everything we want is to get there as fast as we possibly can and just keep improving. And that's not the other thing. Like we understand that most of the time these things don't happen in like one big jump from one year to the next. We're seeing steady improvement over time. And that's certainly what our expectation is.
Benson? Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Margaret.
Okay, going back to Yoshi, was a multi-year deal ever considered?
We talked about a number of things. We felt like in the end, the 1 year made sense for Yoshi and for the Pirates. I think he's really looking forward to being in a place where he can establish himself. And, you know, it would be a great outcome for us if the relationship continued past 1 year. It would be great if it did, but we all decided to focus on 1 year for now.
We got to talk to him yesterday. He was really ecstatic.
Great. Well, that's good to hear. And again, really enjoyed him on the team and looking forward to getting to know him even better next year.
Ben, I just was looking for some clarity. You just talk about wanting to add a starting pitcher. You know, you talked about the decision to not bring back Chad. Well, you just signed a guy who was a starter and then spent the end of last year in the bullpen, which is sort of without the health issues, which is sort of similar to Chad's track. So what was it, a philosophical difference between where you guys saw Chad was at and what he saw himself was at? Or it's just, had you figured out, hey, if we viewed him as part of our team in 2022, it was as a reliever and he disagreed, so you just decided to cut bait?
Disagreement's the wrong word. We've had conversations with Chad over time, and look, we know he's capable of doing both. We felt like at the end of the year there, it made sense for us and for Chad to find out what it was going to look like in the bullpen. And as we get into the off season, as we put our 40-man together and pitching staff together, we just decided that it made the most sense for Chad and for us to give him a chance at free agency.
Yeah, Ben, both you and John Baker have mentioned that just in general across baseball, but specific to you guys as well, we might see it become more common for guys to make a jump to the majors. We saw that last year with Rodolfo. Is that as easy or is it riskier in some ways to do with pitching though? What would be your approach in terms of development with pitchers?
Yeah, you know, good question. I mean, the one thing about pitching is that you have the ball in your hand, so you can control more of what's going on. And I suppose in some ways that means that if there is a pitcher who just really develops command of what he's doing, has the stuff and develops command of what he's doing, almost no matter what the level is, that might translate. You know, you can more clearly see how that could translate against better hitters because they control what they're doing with the ball in their hand. If they can do the same thing in the major leagues as they're doing in AA, like literally the same thing, sometimes we can estimate reasonably well what that would turn into. Whereas with hitters, it's a little bit harder because they don't have the ball in their hands. It's a reaction skill. And hitters doing things in AA, it's just they're facing different things in the major leagues. You don't know for sure. There's less certainty about how they're going to react. So I think you can see it with both position players and pitchers. Again, some of it's just how fully developed the player is. Some of it's team need. Obviously, that can happen. We still believe there's a lot of value in getting games played and development time at the upper levels, both AA and AAA. I wouldn't expect like a huge increase in guys jumping from AA to the big leagues necessarily.
And there were two guys you claimed off waivers that we really didn't get a chance to ask you about, Greg Allen and Eric Hanhold, and also Diego Castillo. You promoted to the 40-man to protect him. Just wanted to ask you about what you saw in those three guys, why they were 40-man candidates.
Yeah, well, with Allen, he's always been a really good defender, switch hitter, base runner, fast. Kind of brings a little bit different element to our outfield mix with the speed and the switch hit, and capable of playing all three outfield positions. He had a ton of success in AAA this year with the Yankees offensively. Started to get to more power, and we're hoping that he unlocks something there. And we really believe he can be squarely in the mix as we get to spring training for a spot in the outfield. Also has a great reputation as a teammate and all that stuff. In Handhold, it's really interesting stuff. He's big, physical, really interesting stuff, power stuff. Right? And obviously a guy that hasn't put it all together quite yet, but and is in kind of a different look where we have some guys from the right side that are four-seam slider type guys. He can sink it a little bit and just a little bit different look out of the bullpen. So trying to add as much bullpen depth as we can, and he would fit into that. And then in Diego's case, obviously picked him up in the trade and knowing he was a free agent at the end of the year and had a terrific year offensively in AA and AAA. He's a guy who can play all the infield spots, makes a ton of contact, started to get into more power this year. Another kid who's just a grinder and works hard and loves baseball. So we felt he was a guy we wanted to keep, and he's part of that young 40-man infield group that we'll learn more about in spring training and in the coming year.
All right, everybody, I got to put an end to this because I believe Ben has a flight to catch. So thank you, Ben, and thank you, everybody, for joining.
Jimmy, one last thing. I don't know if there's questions about coaching, but there was a couple things that maybe needed clarification. Andy Haynes is our hitting coach. He's, hired in the primary lead role, whatever you want to call it. And with Christian Marrero and Tim McKeithen still being part of that team with him on the major league staff, and really excited to add Andy. Andy, struck. It was a long process. We spent a lot of time on it. He struck us as just sort of a really, uncommon combination of experience with open-mindedness and a real desire to collaborate. So really looking forward to working with him, and reports about him from the last couple places he's been have been really strong. And then we hired Radley Haddad from the Yankees, and that's not to replace the Major League Field Coordinator role. Rabs will be the third base coach. Rabs will retain the Major League Field Coordinator role also, along with being third base coach. Radley's role will be focused on game planning and strategy. So he'll be a big part of our pitching and catching group, helping prepare for games in terms of pitch usage and sequencing, and then he'll be in the dugout in game, helping to make adjustments in with our strategy, particularly pitcher batter matchups, and then with that, Donnie Kelly will kind of take the lead role with our infield defensive work. I don't know if there's other questions related to staff, but just wanted to clarify that.
Is that all your hires, or do you have another hire to make? There was some talk that you might have one more position you had.
I think that's going to be it. We're still looking at just some of the support roles and whether there's reallocation, things like that, but wouldn't expect any other hires in the traditional Major League coaching sense.
All right. All right. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.